Hi everyone, Glenn here. We're talking about the Clara Barton project, and today we're chatting with Jim DeCamp. Jim was a high school English teacher and also Vietnam combat veteran, and um, and and so Jim and I have been talking a little bit about how the how the medics, okay, we're part of the battlefield. We're part of the military community there, uh, in an attempt to try to maybe get some insight into what Clara was experiencing. There's a famous story of Clara at the Battle of Antietam, where she runs out in the middle of the chaos of the battlefield, and she grabs a hold of one soldier who has been injured. And while she's doing that, there's a musket shot, and the shot blows a hole through the sleeve of her blouse, and then goes and actually kills the man that she was just trying to save. And and in many ways, that story has characterized Clara's experience as a military nurse, and has had many different interpretations of what that story means, and who Clara is in that story. And I think that's one of the things we're really interested in exploring. So Jim, tell me a little bit about, okay, your experience with the medics that were caring for your unit in Vietnam.
Right. I was a mortarman with the 2nd of the 27th Wolfhounds attached to the 25th Infantry Division out of Cu Chi in my case, from July of 70 until November of 70 when they went home. And that unit had just been in Cambodia before I got there, in the acknowledged Cambodia incursion. They'd been in Cambodia before without telling anybody. And so it was a relatively peaceful time to be in Vietnam in combat. And I think the salient point to this story is especially what Glenn talked about, where she had her hands on the soldier and he died. We didn't have a medic attached to the mortar squad because we stayed in the command position, but each of the infantry platoons had a medic. And the two guys who were killed while I was there, the two Wolfhounds, were both killed passively by booby traps. So it wasn't a firefight, although we did have those. So it wasn't a dramatic. It was, an accident. They stepped on the wire and tripped it and were killed. In both cases, the medics were there, had to try to attend to them. And then I think the point that I remember well is they had to bag them up and put them on a helicopter. And then they had to come back. And the first time it happened to me, it might not have been their first time. There's a ceremony with the dead in the military, and I'm sure there was in the Civil War. In Vietnam, it's quite moving. They take the rifle and they stick it bayonet down into the ground, and they put the helmet on top of the rifle, and they put the dog tags and the empty boots, and then a chaplain speaks. So the first time it happened, we're standing in formation, which we very seldom did, and I was not personally friends with these guys. They were in a different platoon, 125 of us or so in the company. And the chaplain spoke very eloquently and beautifully about the young man that had died. And then a little later, another young man died, and we were back there, and the chaplain gave the exact same speech. And it occurred to me that he hadn't known either one of these guys, and that it was rote. It was part of his deal, and that was just going to go on and had gone on endlessly and endlessly. So I think the salient thing is all the lives she saved, but I'm sure the ones that haunted her were the lives that she didn't. And of course, the carnage of the Civil War was just unimaginable by our standards. So she saw them die in operating tables, and she saw them die on the way to the operating theater, and she saw them die on the battlefield. And I'm sure what haunted her was not the ones that she cared for and cured, but I'm sure it's the ones that she saw, and sometimes die in her arms, probably, or in her hands, and that's the thing. I think she didn't kill anybody, so she doesn't have to deal with that. But the other half of combat is the people that you lost, and so I'm sure it would take some recovery from that experience, and God knows how many people she saw die. You know, I mean, the Antietam, you know, the slaughter at those battles, and you know, the dismemberment and the crude surgery, and you know, that nobody was anesthetized. You know, so the sounds, it just must have been. I don't think how you would ever shake those from your mind from those.
Yeah, the point that you make about the medics actually, you know, not only being there to provide, you know, medical assistance, but also that they are a part of that walk afterwards, after a soldier dies, and all the things that happens after that. What strikes me is that, you know, that there's some indications in some of her diaries and some of her life where she wasn't completely accepting of the sort of famous tag that was put on her as Angel of the Battlefield, or the American Florence Nightingale. This kind of romantic sort of branding of this woman who did all this good work, and I think that you know hearing you talk about this, I could imagine one of the reasons why she would want to shun that would be that she actually saw all this other stuff, which there's no romanticism to it at all, right? Right.
Yeah, she had to help recover those bodies and watch them be carried, you know, in carts, and you know, so the whole process of war that she saw up close and personal. The interesting akin would be to the nurses in Vietnam who were extraordinary. Very seldom on the front lines, of course, but they had such quick response that the first care place was very close to the battlefield, so they saw the guys coming in, and you know, most of us in this audience grew up watching MASH, and the opening of MASH is there's two bodies on the helicopter wings that come in, and they dash out, and so that. And they're, you know, they were unsung, of course, the Vietnam nurses. She had to deal with being sung. You know, she had to deal with the accolades, and I'm sure she must have felt a little uncomfortable with it. That you know, that there were so many people deserving, and she probably saw great heroism. Just those doctors that spent 12 hours on their feet sawing people off, sawing body parts off. You know, she must have thought they were heroes all over the place. So. And I don't know what her feelings were about the cause, you know, but whether you know, she was a virulent anti-slavery person or abolitionist, but regardless of the just cause in that war, the consequences were just hellacious.
Yeah, great. Thank you for those thoughts there, because I think that starts to help us understand a little bit more about a part of her life that hasn't been talked about too much. So thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.